Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello there. So we are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. We have so many years of homeschooling and educational experience between us, and yet we're not that old. So isn't that amazing? It really is one of those mathematical miracles, isn't it? So you can trust the advice, but know that you'll never leave feeling like you can't measure up. We promise to never present a perfect, shiny image. You will get the whole truth and nothing but the truth from us.
Yeah, or at least we really don't want you to leave feeling like you'll never measure up to us because we are not perfect. We 100% make mistakes in parenting and in life. But we have both been homeschooling long enough to know that it is both awesome and that it's working. So when we were newbies, obviously, we were so much more unsure of ourselves and we were worried, right? Just like you might be if you're a newbie and you're like, oh my God, am I totally messing up my child's life? Like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? But seriously, when you go on social media and some homeschool influencer is showing you how easy it is to homeschool in their magazine spread worthy home and like, well, look, it can be hard, but you really do have to remember that they're full of crap. Or at least mostly full of crap. We'll give them that. Mostly, okay? They are probably pushing that specific product because they've got an affiliate link for it. And their kids are not always wearing matching outfits. And their home truly is a mess just outside of the camera frame. It is hard to measure up, but we aren't doing that here.
Definitely not. What we are about here, though, are secular and progressive values. There are so many spaces in the homeschool community that are dominated by pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, religious fundamentalism, bigotry, and just so many more variations of the same ick. And there's none of that here.
Yeah, no, we welcome families of all makeups, identities, and lived experiences. We believe deeply and unapologetically that diversity strengthens communities. It enriches learning and it makes our spaces more honest, compassionate, and resilient. We also firmly acknowledge that homeschooling is a privilege and that access to time, resources, safety, and choice is not distributed equally. We do not pretend otherwise, and we do not shy away from naming the systemic barriers that make education and, frankly, stability out of reach for so many families. We are committed to creating inclusive, affirming spaces rooted in justice, humanity, and care, community care, mutual aid. In this moment in history, let us just say loudly for anyone sitting in the back, fuck ICE. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Families, everyone deserves safety, dignity, healthcare, human rights, the right to exist without fear. That belief is non-negotiable here. So if you're tuning in and you're like, yes, these are my people, awesome. If you're tuning in and you're like, what are these people talking about? There's a button on your phone. Goodbye.
I was thinking that when you were talking, and before you even got to the fuck ice part, I was like, she's talking about inclusive, justice, humanity, care. And I was like, do you know how many people are disconnecting right now? We see it in our stats.
Yeah.
It shows us on the services that we broadcast on. We can see it on our graphs. We can see after our value statement, there's like this whoosh, right? And we're like, okay, great. Have a nice day. Have an awesome time. Go back to the gazillion other groups that are out there that spit out all the crap you gobble up with a spoon. So enjoy. We don't do
That's
that
it.
here.
Not our people. And that's just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with that out of the way, let's talk about today's topic. We are digging into homeschool advice, specifically how to find guidance and support that you can actually trust. Because let's be honest, the homeschool world can feel a bit like the Wild West. Everyone's an expert, opinions are loud, credentials are optional, and parents are often left to sort through all of this when they're already overwhelmed and second guessing themselves. And that's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So today we want to talk about how to navigate that noise, how to tell the difference between real support and, frankly, internet bravado, and why your kid's education deserves more than hot takes from strangers with a Wi Fi connection. It is also important to note that this episode is not just for those new homeschoolers. What you are going to find throughout your journey as a homeschooler is that you enter new phases of learning right along with all of the new phases of growth and development. And there are going to be plenty of times when you have to go back to the drawing board, find new solutions, shift gears, tweak, and like seriously, don't even get us started on the wrench that puberty throws into your plans. I just, yeah, if you're not there yet, brace yourself. We just had our well visit, and the doctor was like, "Oh, given that he's grown 4 inches in 10 months, I thought I'd see more signs of puberty, but he's still quite early in puberty." And I'm like, okay, that's great. Wonderful. Okay.
And then
So,
you have my
yeah.
parenting journey as like a cautionary tale. You're like, oh God.
Oh, that's right. Oh, okay. But first, before we get into all of that goodness, we do like to begin all of our episodes with just a general weekly recap, part of that whole keeping it real and being honest about the good and the bad, including annual well visits. So, how's your week going, Megan?
Good. And I will say, I love having teens. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I have awesome teens, but puberty is a whole extra level. Like it is. Whew, so yeah, but yeah, what's going on? I've been working on some sewing projects. I've been working on my summer wardrobe, if you will. And I talked a couple of weeks ago about how I like to buy sheets and tablecloths and stuff at the thrift store and then turn them into things. So I finished a wide leg pair of pants made out of an old tablecloth that had holes on the end of it, but I could just work around them. I didn't need that part for my pants. And then I found this tablecloth that was meant for a round table. So the design is in the round and it's in the process of becoming a circle skirt. And I love it because I paid the equivalent of like $5 for it at the thrift store. And I'm like, well, I could sew that up for nothing. So I'm working on some fun new things to kind of add to my wardrobe this summer, which will be good. I should say I do not have a large wardrobe. So we are pretty minimalist and I own very, very, very little clothing. And I've really been trying to beef that up a little bit. Like instead of owning 3 pairs of pants, now I'm going to own like 5 pairs of pants. So yeah, so I've been working on that, which is fun. I'm adding some life to our apartment, which I talked a little while ago about how our previous homes were all extreme minimalism, what you see on the internet. Our decorating style could best be described as it looks like we've just been robbed. Okay. White walls, gray, everything, no clutter. And I love seeing maximalist accounts online. And I was always like, I could never do that, this and that. So I decided that in our apartment here, I was going to approach maximalism light, which my daughter is like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of because it's like a jumbo shrimp. You can't have maximalist light, but I'm easing into it. So over the next week or two, my project is I'm going to try to give our hallway some pizzazz. I bought a little bit of wallpaper for one wall, and then I bought a print on Etsy that's just a PDF. You spend like $2 and they send you the file and you can print it out yourself with the photo place. But we have at the end of our hallway like an electrical box that's not particularly ugly. It's not like one of the metal ones that looks very industrial, but it's just a noticeable square on the wall. And so I asked the artist if she could make the design like the exact size of our box. And then I bought some cute little like peel and stick molding to go around it that's beaded molding. And so I'm adding some life, some character. It's very maximalist light. If you're a real maximalist, if I ever post pictures, you're going to be like, that is so not maximalism. But for me, it is because I came from, it looks like we've been robbed. So I'm pretty excited. I've been having fun with that. My boys just got back from England. They went to play Pokemon in Birmingham over the weekend. If you're new to the podcast, we live in Portugal. That's not that far for us. And flights within Europe are super cheap. My youngest son's flight home was $13, I think. It really wasn't anything crazy. So they went and did that. But it was the first time that my youngest has traveled by himself. He had to fly solo to England to meet his older brother there, who was coming in from a birthday trip in Canada. And so that was a big thing for him. And then the only other thing that I've got is on the podcast, we talk all the time about how I'm a loosey-goosey unschooler. And Amanda and I are doing some prep for a couple of episodes coming up where we're going to be talking about homeschool regulations and some things like that. But it's interesting because in preparation for that, I've been reading the book Homeschooled by Stefan Merrill Block. He has recently had articles in the New York Times and the Atlantic about his homeschool experience, which we shall just say was not positive. And I'm realizing that on the podcast, we've always talked about how unschooling is this wide range, this big spectrum of approaches. And the same way Amanda calls herself an aggressive academic homeschooler, to label herself and in a really succinct way, be like, this is what we do. Like, you know exactly what their jam is pretty much with that title. I'm like, I need a different title for unschooling. I don't know what it is yet. It's going to be like strategic unschooling or proactive unschooling, but then that sounds judgmental against people who aren't doing it my way. So I haven't figured out what it's going to be, but I need a new
Maybe
title.
maybe guided
Guided?
unschooling, because
I
you
like
definitely
it.
do a lot of guiding with your
Like life
vision
coaching.
boarding and
Yeah.
intention setting and things like that. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Because I'm like, I'm getting lumped in with what's in this book, which is like, whoo, and I don't like that. So yeah, so that's just what's been on my mind lately. But anyway, what's new with you?
I'm still failing at life. That's not true. I have a lot
You're
going
here.
on.
Yeah,
I
you're
am.
here.
I'm here. I have been unwell for ages and I'm still showing up, and I have taken on extra work and I'm getting back to things, and that's all. Yes. So I'm not actually failing at life. I just feel like I'm falling more and more behind at life, which is like a pretty bad feeling for the end of January, but it is what it is. Much like Megan was talking about having 3 pairs of pants. I talked in the last episode about how I make sure that my entire family has like at least 30 pairs of underwear. That way it's fine when I fall really behind on laundry. I did get a couple loads of laundry done, not because we were running out of underwear, although that was soon to be an issue, but because my kiddo, who insists on growing like a weed because hello puberty, only has like 7 pairs of pants that fit well. And also, hello puberty, he's not re-wearing them very often because nobody wants that happening. So I did have to buckle down and make sure that we had some clean pants. But yeah, I'm still working on those cookies so that they're getting closer and closer to Valentine's Day cookies. Yeah,
You could send your kid
just
to visit with me for a week and I'll sew him a whole new wardrobe out of tablecloths and sheets and curtains and send him
he would
back to
be
you.
he would be so unhappy. He'd be like, "These are not 100% cotton." And
Oh, I'm all
um
about the natural fibers. Hello, I'm a perimenopausal woman. Cool.
there's a difference between natural fibers and the type of cotton that he is
Yes,
okay with. You've got neurodivergent kiddos. You have to know
I
the
am very well
pants are
aware.
an issue.
Hmm.
The pants are an issue, and they're not easy to find when they suddenly grow. And you're like, I'm sorry, but nobody has the type of pants that you want right now. So you're going to have to make these work. All right. So what we're talking about today, homeschool advice. If you have ever posted in a Facebook group seeking homeschool advice, you have probably gotten a range of responses that include things like try unschooling with no explanation beyond that, like, gee, I'll get right on that, whatever that's going to look like in my home and whatever that actually means. Or my kid learned to read at 14 and now they're a NASA engineer. Stop worrying about it. Like, okay, sure. Or I never taught my kids math and now they run 3 successful businesses. Like, fantastic. Or we use the good and the beautiful. We just skip the religious stuff. Like, oh, spectacular. Let me just get my Bible out. Okay, maybe it's something like, well, if your 4-year-old can't focus, just take away screens, red dye, and gluten. Like, yes, of course.
And why does your 4-year-old need to focus? Let's go there too, right? Like, hello, there's so many things wrong with that.
Yeah, okay, right. Or you're overthinking it. Kids learn when they're ready. Like, okay, but that doesn't actually help me right now. Thank you very much. Maybe, oh, you need an accredited curriculum if they're going to go to college. Obviously posted very confidently with no teen in sight. Never mind the fact that curriculum isn't even actually accredited. So, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Or you get statements on the other end of the spectrum, but that are equally untrue and unhelpful. Like, oh, they'll never have a real diploma. They definitely need to sit for the GED. Like,
No.
okay, sit down, shut up. Thank you. Maybe you get something like, you should be teaching algebra by middle school, or they'll be completely behind. Like, okay, thank you for your unhelpful grain of salt. You need to follow the state standards, of course, obviously, because like I care about the state standards and I don't even follow them, right? Like, okay, fine. Maybe you need daily grades, or how will you know if they're learning? Or this is one of my favorites. That curriculum isn't rigorous enough. And then like the comment right below it will be like, that curriculum is too dry and rigorous. Choose something more fun. And you're like, well, wait a minute, which is it? Like, is it raining or is it sunny or is it like, well, yep. Okay.
Like,
So
why don't I just spend $200 on it and try it and figure it out, only to realize that I've just wasted $200?
fantastic. And these responses, like, they don't even include the responses that are like mean or just plant intense self doubt, or the ones that, and it happens. If you have been on Facebook lately, you know it happens. The responses that tell you like how much you're screwing this whole thing up. People are unfiltered in a not good way on the internet right now.
Not in our charming way.
Yeah. We're charming and mostly supportive. Unless you're
Mostly.
the people who are the flat earthers who are like really upset with us for always ragging on flat earthers. But
Yeah, we do that. Yep.
eh,
Oh, some of the comments on social media lately, we got called communists the other day. I just leave
yeah,
them because I'm like, thanks for boosting our post. Like,
that's it. Thank you so much for the traction.
yeah. All right. So as we jump in, we wanted to share a little bit about a real post that inspired this episode because it was kind of the post that broke the camel's back. Is that a thing, right? The straw, the post.
Yeah.
We see these posts all the time and we just look at the whole exchange and we're like, this is so broken. This is so dysfunctional. But there was one recently that was just like, whew. So I will recap in the most generic way possible because I don't want to ruin anyone's anonymity there. It was in a private group, but it's a post that we've all seen. Okay. This is not something that would be specific to one individual. 6-year-old kid struggling with writing, won't sit down and do work. It's a struggle to get them to do work. There was no mention of a neurodivergence diagnosis or suspected neurodivergence. Okay. So basically just 6-year-old isn't reading, doesn't sit down to do work. Like we've seen this post 100 times. This is not new. It was just that day, it was the post that broke the camel's back. Okay. I looked at it last night in order to prep for this episode, just to be the most current. There were 82 responses on this post. Okay. And I took the time to read them all, which, oh, that was great for my stress level. Okay. Here we go. You ready?
So I'm going to put this out there and say that that was probably a waste of time on your part. I mean, I appreciate the effort for this particular episode, but like 82 responses on a post that's like,
I am the one who needs the detail. And I will say, when we've done previous episodes, when we did the Tuttle Twins thing, I went and looked at all the Tuttle Twins stuff on social media and whatever. And Amanda is like, absolutely not, because then my algorithm is going to be completely fucked. And let me tell you, we put out a unit study in November, December, I think, I don't know, one of those. But it was how democracies fall. And there's an activity in there on being able to identify propaganda and how to analyze propaganda and what it means. And so we pulled Nazi propaganda that would have been put out by Joseph Goebbels. And then we pulled current propaganda being put out by the government today, by Department of Homeland Security, Department of Education, the Justice Department. And so I went to these social media pages. If you have not, know that you will screw up your algorithm, but also it is horrifying. It's like watching a train wreck. You can't not look at it. I am still getting all of those channels being pushed into my feed. So I am like a glutton for punishment, and I went through the 82 comments. So here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to read off what was in the 82 comments. And at the end, I want you to ask yourself what actionable information you got from those 82 comments. If you had a 6-year-old who was struggling to read and didn't want to sit still to do traditional work/worksheets, and you get these 82 responses, what's your first step? That's the challenge here. Okay. Splash Learning, 2 suggestions. Reading Eggs, 13 suggestions. Reading.com, 4 suggestions. Teach Your Monster to Read, 10 suggestions. Please note that one person said that it's in a British accent, which makes it quote unquote questionable. I am not sure what's questionable about a British accent, but okay. Okay, ABC Mouse, 2 votes. FYI, ABC Mouse, total Scientology connection. We're secular. We don't want to fund Scientology. Go figure. Okay, Nessie Learning Apps, endless series. 3 people said there's no such thing as behind. Okay, Khan Academy Kids, 4 votes. Dr. Seuss Ocean House Media App. Edoki Montessori. Kids Duolingo, 6 votes. Leapfrog, 5 votes. I'm a personal huge fan of Leapfrog. Explode the Code, Logic of English. Treasure Hunt Reading. Ello, never heard of it, but it got 2 votes. All About Reading. Starfall, 4 votes. PBS Kids, 2 votes. Hooked on Phonics, 3 votes. Learn with Homer, 2 votes. Any video game with text that they have to read, got 2 votes. Tutoring on OutSchool. Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons, which is a book. I got it when my kids were little. I found it to be the most boring book that's ever been written in my lifetime. Alpha Blocks, 2 votes. Writing in Sand and Shaving Cream, 3 votes. Montessori Manipulatives. Sight word flashcards taped up all over the house. EBLI app, Ebly app. I've never heard of it, so I don't know if I'm supposed to say the letters or make a sound with those letters, but I'm not sure. Time for Learning, which we did a whole episode about, not fans. Letter workbooks, meaning just like Dollar Tree, making letters, making words. Okay. Has your child been assessed for dyslexia? Turn closed captioning on the television, wild reading, and get those old-fashioned magnetic fridge letters. Holy cow. Okay, do you have a clue what to do with all of that information now? What's your first step? What are you going to go through all of them and try them all? Your kid's going to have whiplash. You try this one, you try that one, you try this one, you try that one.
And I would say that realistically, in something like that, with 82 responses, either the parent got overwhelmed after the first 10 to 15 and just picked from the first ones, or they did exactly what you just did. And we're like, well, this one got 13 recommendations, so I guess we'll start with that one and see what happens. Even though you have no idea why it got 13 recommendations or the situation that those folks were in, or if they all had affiliate links, or, I mean, it's just that, like, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, that's what I was just about to say, right? I was just about to say, so how many people end up on Time for Learning and Mia Academy? We see it constantly. And we've talked in our episodes about liking Khan Academy, Funcation Academy. There's some others, and people are like, oh, I've never heard of Funcation Academy. Yeah, because they don't have an army of influencers out there who don't even use their program, hawking their program with an affiliate link. That's why everyone has heard of Time for Learning and Mia Academy, because they have strong, strong, strong influencer programs. We have not been invited to join them because when we evaluated both of them, we trashed them. So, which we'd rather do that and not make affiliate money because it's dirty money. You're not even using the program half the time. There's an influencer who did a Time for Learning commercial. I mean, when I say commercial, how old is that child of the 80s? Hello. It was reels that she put out and they were sponsored on Instagram. She put it out and it was her kids sitting at a computer clicking stuff and it had voiceover. And she was like, I love Time for Learning because blah, blah, blah. Put it out there with her affiliate code. I shit you not. 2 months later, she used the same video and changed the voiceover to promote IXL and pushed her affiliate link code for IXL. So a lot of times these names that are the most popular are not necessarily the best programs. There's a reason why you're hearing that.
I mean, in fairness, if you were using only IXL or only Time for Learning, you probably need to be using them both to make sure that your kid gets a decently well-rounded education. But maybe don't pay for 2 separate online things just to try to cover everything. Anyway, we digress.
We do a lot. Okay. So my response on this specific post, okay, FYI, this kiddo, it's a whole transitioning from public school situation, and the parent still has a very heavy public school mentality. So my response on this post was, oh goodness, this has much less to do with your child and a lot more to do with the fact that the standards for public school kindergarten are not at all age or developmentally appropriate. Kiddo was still in kindergarten. Your child is not behind. Okay, so that, oh, add a third tick to the your child is not behind thing, because that was me. But I didn't say there's no such thing as behind. I just said her child isn't behind. I said he's not meant to sit down and focus at this age. Reading is not a requirement in kindergarten in most of the world. It's just the fucked up standards in the US that keep doubling down on pushing harder and harder with our littles, and it's not paying off for us. We consistently slide in the global education rankings, and countries that delay formal academics until closer to age 7 are trouncing us. Not to mention, we also know from tons of studies that pushing our littles harder when they are younger leads to burnout at around age 11. We also know that kids who start formal academics later level out with kids who start earlier at about that same age as well. And this is not me making things up. These are studies that Amanda and I have read ad nauseum. Okay. So there are literally no advantages to pushing him early. The more you stress about him being behind and push, the more likely you are to cause anxiety and burnout with him. I would absolutely homeschool your kiddo, but I would start with a healthy period of deschooling for both of you. Dismantle that thought process that has you stressing out about a 6-year-old not knowing how to read or sitting down and doing worksheets. Your kiddo is fine. But I can almost guarantee you that person was like 13 votes for reading eggs. Off I go, right? Like, because we see this all the time. So today we're going to be talking about how to cut through all this noise and get actionable advice from trusted sources. Let's do this.
Well, yeah. And let's be honest, I come from a different place. And I do think you don't need to be doing strong academics for a kindergartner. But I would not have had the same response as Megan. Even still, my response would have been, if you feel like your kiddo is struggling in kindergarten with reading and they are still in kindergarten, make sure that you're focusing on a really solid understanding of phonics. Public schools, brick and mortar schools, they don't do a great job with phonics, generally speaking. And so instead of worrying about whether or not they're reading, make sure that you as the parent and your kiddo understand phonics. It is shocking how many parents do not understand phonics because we were not taught phonics in school. We don't know all of the sounds that the letters make and how they come together. And that's not the same as just signing up for an online program and sticking your kid in front of it.
There's more to it than that.
But yeah, but you can just throw out names of things you can pay for and it'll be fine. Okay, so obviously, this is kind of that fundamental problem with the internet these days, the internet advice problem. Confidence online is not the same thing as competence. And we've talked about this before in other episodes, right? Like there is access to tons of information, and we have access to a much larger community of people who are happy to share their lived experience. And lived experience is important to hear, and it's important to acknowledge. That does not mean that all lived experience is equal or is applicable to you and your situation. A lot of times on the internet, the loudest voices are often the most extreme, the least nuanced, the least understanding, but somehow the most confident. This is not new. Anyone who is connected to the internet these days knows that the world is full of people who have a lot to say with a lot of confidence. And then you're like, really? Yeah? Yeah,
Well,
anything to back that up.
I'm thinking about the mom in the book that I'm reading, the homeschooled book by Stefan Merrill something. I forget his name. Sorry, Stefan. So I'm sure this mom felt at the time that she was doing what was best for her child. It seems that she had love for her child. It also seems that she had a lot of mental health struggles, but he did not feel comfortable sharing his homeschool experience until his mother died. That way he could share an honest interpretation of his homeschool experience. So this is before the era of social media that his mom was homeschooling him. But imagine she's the one giving the advice with superb confidence, superb levels of confidence. And here's this guy being featured in the New York Times talking about what an absolute train wreck his homeschool experience was.
It is not hard to think about lots and lots of people these days that are excellent examples of this, incredibly extreme positions that are not nuanced, that are not science based, they're not rooted in fact or reality, and yet they're very confident in what they're sharing. And there's a good reason to not give their comments the weight that you might give someone else. There's also the very real issue of the keyboard warriors. We all know them. We all see them. If you are on the internet in any way, shape, or form, you have 100% dealt with the people that you're like, first off, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And second off, would you ever say that to my face? But because they're behind a keyboard and they have anonymity, they go to town. And then you have all of these other people who are doing the quiet, boring, real work of educating kids day in and day out. And yeah, sometimes they come in and they try to explain to you. And instead of just saying, my kid loved reading eggs, they give a long response and they say, research says this, and you might want to try this, but if they prefer this, you might that, or they're asking a bunch of questions and it's not quick and easy to look at. And you got 81 other responses to look at. So the boring, long, real world response of these are the things to think about when educating your kid, it doesn't grab your attention the same way the one liners do. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. We talked not that long ago on an episode about the fact that the people behind social media platforms, they know that psychology and they capitalize on it to make sure that it's working for them, but it might not be working for you as the parent or caregiver in this situation.
Yeah. All right. So Amanda brought up the fact that these loud voices online might come in with oodles of confidence, but might not necessarily be able to back that up with qualifications in some way, shape, or form. And we're not talking qualifications meaning a PhD, and there's no degree in homeschooling. That's not a thing. So, who are you getting this advice from? And when somebody just drops the name reading eggs, you have no idea where that's coming from, what their experience level is. I mean, they're like reading eggs. I mean, that just doesn't hold a lot of weight as a recommendation for me because you've just signed up for it. So there you go.
And your 4-year-old is excitedly using it, whereas my 6-year-old is coming out of public school and has all of this other like school trauma and whatever they're feeling themselves because they're not in the right reading level at school, or they didn't get the
Mm,
special reward from school because they didn't get, like, it's just not the same.
yeah,
It's not
no,
the
it's
same.
not. Right. So, yeah. I mean, here's the thing, we're 1,000% confident. Amanda doesn't like it when I use random percentages like that. She's like, it's 100%. That's how math works. I sound like Trump
I'm
when
at
I'm like,
100%.
your your prescription costs are going to go down 1,200%. You're like, you're going to pay me to take my prescription? I don't understand
Fantastic.
what's
I love
happening.
it. Sign me up. I have so
Right?
many. Sign me up.
But I'm going to do it anyway. We're 1,000% sure. I lumped Amanda into the 1,000% too. We're 1,000% sure that if you're listening to this podcast and trying to grow as a homeschool parent, we'll just go out on a limb and say that you care about your child's educational outcomes. You wouldn't be here if you were like, I'm sure this will all work out fine. I don't have to worry about it. I signed them up for time for learning. It spits out a diploma at the end. We're good. You're not doing that and listening to this, most likely. And if you are, we're not judging you because we've talked before about the fact that sometimes there are seasons of life that are a total shit show. And sometimes that's all you can do. And that's okay. So again, you're still doing your best because 100% looks different some days than it does other days. Your best, but
Or
you're always doing
1,000
your
if you're
best.
Megan.
Yeah, 1,000, 4,000. I mean, it just, whatever. Just pick a number,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So, yeah. So we know you want what's best for your kid, both now and in the future. So, when it comes to your child's education, we'd encourage you to think about some things when you're looking for resources. Okay. I've talked about it before. We've moved a million times for my husband's job, basically. And so the number of times that I've had to hire contractors to do stuff when we buy a new house or fix stuff before we sell a house or whatever. Okay. If I'm hiring a contractor, especially when we lived in South Florida where shit gets real shady. Okay. You're wanting to make sure that that person is licensed and insured before they go up on your roof and fall off your roof. And next thing you know, they own your house, not you. So we are checking licensing, we're checking insurance, we're checking references, we're checking experience. We're doing all this stuff before we allow this person to climb up on our roof and tell us what's wrong with our roof. But for some reason, when it comes to our kids' education, we're not necessarily looking for those things. It's like, oh, well, Susan Q on the internet said to do this, so I'm doing that thing. And it's like, well, who the hell is Susan Q? Did she start homeschooling last week? Did her son write a book that's being featured in the New York Times talking about what a crappy homeschool experience he had? Who is this person and where is this advice coming from?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Or do they homeschool in the same way that I would want to homeschool? It matters. All of that kind of context matters. Look, I have talked on the podcast before. If you're just tuning in, this is one of your first episodes. I'm chronically ill. I am disabled. I have lots of health problems. I have a huge medical team to handle my various diagnoses and medications. And I have a primary who kind of serves as my medical quarterback. But if I need medical support, I'm not going to wander in to the CVS Minute Clinic or do a quick web visit with someone who has allocated roughly 3.5 minutes to assess, diagnose, and prescribe something. I need specificity. I need someone who can say, well, this interacts with that, and this probably overlaps with that. And you're taking this medication, so you can't take this, even though this would be the most common one we would recommend. And let's visit this. I need someone who understands all of those different pieces and parts. And every child's educational needs are unique. And they also require that level of specificity. After all, if one size fits all worked, first off, we'd all have a lot more clothes because you'd put on a one size fits all thing and it would actually look good instead of looking like you put on a bag. But also, you probably would have just left them in public school. If one size fits all worked, why would you be taking on this extra work at home? Like, yes, I would love to be completely overwhelmed and spend my own money and worry about whether or not I'm messing up my child. So why is it that when it comes to our kids' education, why do we accept advice from people we've never interacted with? We have no background information on. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know how much their values align with us, how much their educational methodologies and ideals align with us. If you would vet a doctor or a roofer for their credentials and their tenure and experience and accountability, why are we not doing that for our kids?
In the homeschool world, there's very little structure around like these are the people you can go to, these are the experts you can go to where you know you're going to be able to get solid advice. That doesn't exist like it does in so many other things. I mean, even in the public school world, like you talked about one size fits all. I've shared in other episodes about the IEP meeting that was the nail in the coffin for our public school experience. Even in that scenario, you can hire an advocate to go to your IEP meeting with you. You have resources, you have support to do these things with you. There's very little of that in the homeschool world. So I think that's why so many people end up turning to these groups. But then you get 82 comments and you're just randomly picking a name out of a hat for how you're going to teach your kid to read. It's like, okay.
Well, and I think the thing that I would say is there are a lot of people in the community who have a lot of experience
Mhm.
or have a lot of interactions. They have that knowledge, but it's just not the same. There's not the letters behind their name,
Mhm.
or it's not the kind of thing. It, it's a lot harder to find
Yeah.
because of the nature of the homeschool community and the lack of
Like a
universal
designation.
qualifications and
Yeah.
designations. Yeah, exactly. It's a hard thing in the homeschool world.
And 13 people said reading eggs. So you're like, well, why wouldn't I just go with the 13? Like, clearly those 13 people must know something I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're seeking advice, red flag, green flag advice. Do you know that guy on the internet? Do you ever see
I
him
know.
who
I
does the
love
red
him.
flag,
I
green
love him.
flag?
He's like
I love him.
falling on the ground and the
Yeah.
scooter. Like, I love it. Yep. Yep.
Okay. We'll say, for example, that none of these things are set in stone. These are just kind of general guidelines, right? So
Yeah.
one green flag tends to be years of experience. Is there somebody who homeschooled their kids all the way through high school and completely screwed the whole thing up? Yeah, of course there are. Hello? How many adult Duggar children are there? Hello? Okay. So years of experience does not necessarily equate to 100% this person knows what they're talking about, but it is kind of a good indicator a lot of times. So
Yeah.
we are not suggesting that if you are new to homeschool that you should sit silently on the sidelines until you've earned your stripes and we allow you to speak in public forums. That is not at all what we are suggesting. Jump in, share, ask questions, participate. Welcome to the community. We love the homeschool community growing. We love welcoming new people. Love it. Okay. However, what I will say is if you're seeking advice, when you ask about a curriculum for preschool and you have oodles of veterans saying to you, no curriculum, just play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have somebody who uses the present tense and says, we are using XYZ. For me, that's a red flag because they're as new as you are. They're probably just as confused as you are. Their advice is very well intentioned. They're like, hey, I'm new too. I did a bunch of research. Here's what I picked. This is what I'm using. And they're sharing. And we love that. But I would maybe just weight that advice differently than I would weight advice from people who have homeschooled long enough to see how the choices that they made played out over the years. Because sometimes there are things that you're like, oh, if I had known, I would have done that very, very differently. I have plenty of those things for the early years of my kids' education. I sent my kids to an aggressive academic preschool so that they would be kindergarten ready and they would be on par and this, that, and the other thing. It was NIAC certified and they had 100% kindergarten readiness testing score and blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh. And do you know what I spent for that preschool experience? Holy shit. If I had that sort of money and taken it and invested it or whatever, oh my gosh, I'd be a millionaire by now. Okay. So I would totally change what I did all those years ago because as I've seen how it all played out over the years, I would change things. So yeah, veteran advice is amazing. We did an episode once a while back now that was titled something along the lines of if we could redo our first year of homeschooling all over again, what would we do differently? But that's the reality, right? It's almost a universal theme that people will evolve over time throughout their years of homeschooling. And as they learn and grow, they're going to shift in what they realize works better or what they've learned, and they're going to be able to pass that along to you. So follow the evolved crowd who has been there and done that, who has made the mistakes and course corrected, and take what the newbies are saying. Take it in. It's great. We love that they're sharing and they'll have some insights for you as well. But if it were me and I were weighting advice, I would weight the advice of veterans higher or heavier, stronger than I would weight advice from somebody who's in the thick of it with me currently.
Yeah, those people are great for camaraderie and
Uh-huh.
commisery, but maybe not necessarily the best place for advice of like where you're heading. So
Mhm.
just keep that in mind. Another kind of green flag, honestly, it's people who ask questions before giving advice. And I know that when you're overwhelmed and you go to the internet and you ask for help or suggestions, the last thing you want to do is have to be like, okay, let me give you more of my personal information. I have no idea who you are, and I'm going to give you even more details about my life. But a lot of times with posts, we see they just don't give enough information kind of off the top to be able to respond with like the best, most solid, the accurate advice, right? And the thing is, that's okay. A lot of times when you're new, like you just don't know what else would have been useful to add to your post. And you also don't know these people on the internet, and you're probably trying to protect some of your privacy. We totally get that. But if you want good advice, you really do need to slow down and think about the person who's asking, the person who's saying, well, before we can really answer that, what have you tried? What worked? What didn't work? And what part of it didn't work? Like, if you just say, this one thing didn't work, I'm like, okay, but what part of it? Was it that they didn't like the videos? They didn't like the textbook? It was too dry? They didn't like the read alouds? All of those pieces are in all of these other curriculums. And if the whole thing didn't work, then that rules out a bunch of options. If it was just one piece, then that tells us, like, well, this other one is very similar to that and it has a lot of the same qualities and things like that. Maybe you would like that. But if you avoid or ignore the ones that don't just throw out a random name of a curriculum or a website you can pay for in favor of the ones that are like reading eggs times 13, you miss the chance to possibly get some really solid specific advice for you and your kiddo.
I think one of the biggest ones that I see, because I cannot tell you how many times I have commented on posts, how old is your child?
I
Because
know.
the age is missing
It
from the
makes such
post.
a difference. Yes. Just this week, I saw one that was like, I need an ELA curriculum for my kiddo, and I just don't know where to start. I mean, we need so much more information.
But
You know,
here's the thing.
like
People are already shouting out curriculum names. And I'm
they
like,
are.
you do not have enough information to be shouting out curriculum names at this person. You don't know the very basics.
Yeah, that's it. Are they early elementary school and you need to make sure that they understand their phonics and that they have all of that? Or are they middle school where they should be doing more reading actual novels and literary analysis? Are they somewhere in the middle where you're like, we need to work on putting together good sentences and using wow words? You know, like, where are they? Like,
Yeah.
the options are so different.
Yeah. And it could be a 14-year-old and somebody's in the comments going, reading eggs. And you're like, oh my gosh, please stop with the reading eggs. If you don't know how old someone's kid is, hello, you should not be making a single recommendation until you've clarified some stuff.
Absolutely. Or Hearth and Story. And don't get me wrong, I love Hearth and Story. I think it's a great curriculum for a lot of kids. I I think it works for the vast majority of kids out there. But they only have third to seventh slash eighth grade combined curriculum. But everyone's like, Hearth and Story. But I'm not going to tell you if you've got a second grader that you should use Hearth and Story. And I'm not going to tell you if you've got a 10th grader that you should use
Right.
Hearth and Story. But that doesn't stop everyone else from being like, reading eggs or Hearth and Story. And you
Yeah.
can't, like, you don't use those with the same demographics.
Unless, to your point about specificity, maybe that 10th grader is not reading and working at a 10th grade level. But again, we don't have any of that
Oh,
information.
no. Yeah.
Hearth and
We don't know.
Story, 6th grade might be a great place to meet them where they're at. And there's nothing
Yep.
wrong with that. And you can bring
Nope.
them forward. But if you don't have that information, it's
Without knowing what level they need to be at. And yeah. Yep.
right. Yeah, not good. Okay, red flag advice. 100%. What works for one must work for all. Hearth and Story works for Amanda's kid. Everybody's going to love Hearth and Story. Hello. My kid loves reading eggs, so every kid's going to love reading eggs. My kid loves outschool classes. My kid likes live, small, structured classes on Outschool. I'm coaching a person whose child would sooner stick a fork in his eye than show up to a live class, but he loves a self-paced class. Okay, so what works for one does not work for all. If your initial request doesn't say anything about how your kid learns best, and people are just throwing names at you, the odds that the program that worked for their kid is going to work for your kid is a random shot in the dark. Picture a bullseye, picture an axe. Okay, let's actually make that more fun. Put a bunch of your family members in the dark room and you've got an axe and you've got a target. Try to hit the bullseye. Try to hit the bullseye. Okay, can you
Without
do it?
killing a
And,
family member with
right.
your axe.
And the thing is, you might impale a family member or hit them in the skull, right?
Maybe.
So these are complete shots in the dark, 100%. And again, we go back to that idea. If one size fits all, your kid would probably still be in public school because that's what public school is. I mean, teachers, we love teachers. They try their best to differentiate, but the reality is in the environment that they work in and with the handcuffs that are placed on them a lot of time by administration and bureaucracy, they cannot differentiate. So Just because something works well for someone else's kid does not mean it's going to work for your kid. They might have completely different learning styles. They might have completely different neurotypes. Hello. How many homeschoolers are homeschooling because they're neurodivergent and the traditional system didn't fit for them? So, if that's a thing in this recommendation where you've got a wildly ADHD kid or a brilliantly differently wired autistic kiddo, and this person's kid is completely neurotypical, and the reason they homeschool is so they can play soccer 72 hours a week, those are different children. Okay. Most likely they're going to have very different needs. So that recommendation carries pretty much no weight whatsoever. And you are most likely going to embark on a really expensive, a really stressful, and a really time consuming period of trial and error. And you're not the only one. You're the only one feeling the expensive part, but your kid is feeling the stressful part for sure. And a little bit of the time consuming part, because as that snowball starts to pick up speed, because you've burned through 3, 4, 5 programs that were random suggestions that didn't meet your kids' needs, now you're going to start stressing about how quote unquote behind you are. And that pressure is going to roll downhill onto your kid. And they're going to feel this like, I'm stupid, I'm behind, I'm in a rush. And the reality is, if we could get a little bit more specificity at the start, picking the program, what a difference. You eliminate the expensive, the stressful, the time consuming.
Yeah, no, this completely reminds me of just, again, in the last week, because these posts happen like every week. In the
Right.
last week, I saw someone post, they were asking for science curriculum suggestions. And up to this point, they had been using the same thing for all three of their kiddos. And she wanted to be able to continue doing that. Her kids were 8 to 13. She wanted something that had videos, some sort of textbook component, experiments, but she was feeling really overwhelmed with trying to find the videos and the experiments and all of that herself to go along with the textbook that they were using. So she's looking for something else. And now I'm going to say, for the most part, this is going to be kind of hard because there's a big difference between the average 8-year-old and the average 13-year-old. And so if we're working off the assumption that you've got neurotypical average 8-year-old and 13-year-old, you're doing the same science lesson with a third grader and a seventh grader. That's a pretty big stretch there, but there are some options there. However, one of the very first responses on this mom's post was, "My kiddo loves science, mom." And now don't get me wrong, my 12-year-old really likes science, mom. This morning, he was having an absolute hysterical giggle fit because science mom slimed math dad in the video. And it was hilarious because math dad got something wrong. And so science mom got to slime him. And it was part of his physics lesson. And he thought it was fantastic. And I will recommend science mom to people all of the time. But Science Mom doesn't really come with any sort of textbook style readings. The lessons are video lessons that are consistently 40 to 45 minutes long. It's geared for middle school and even early high school. There's very, very, very few situations where I would recommend it for an 8-year-old, even like a 10-year-old. A 45-minute video lesson that you're supposed to watch all in one go, that's a long lesson for a kid who is not yet in middle school. There's a reason it's geared towards middle school. So I'm going to say another green flag is when the person who's responding to you actually explains how their suggestion lines up with what you're
Yes.
asking for. If they just throw out science mom without saying, but keep in mind that it doesn't come with textbook type texts, and also the videos are 45 minutes long, so make sure that your 8-year-old can handle a 45-minute video lesson in one go. Like, it's probably not the best advice. Make sure that it's like, maybe look at Generation Genius. It comes with a PDF that's 3 to 5 pages long with each of the video lessons. The video lessons are usually no more than 15 minutes. You get a textbook. It comes with a worksheet. It usually comes with an experiment, and it's differentiated by age, but they cover a lot of the same topics at each age level. So you could do a combined thing. That's a green flag message because they're
Hmm.
giving you specifics about how it actually lines up with what you're asking for.
Okay, so why are homeschool parents specifically so vulnerable to bad advice? So I've talked about the fact on the podcast before that when I decided to homeschool, I went to the library, took every single homeschooling book they had off the shelf, took them home, and read all of them. So there are tons of books about homeschooling. There are tons of blogs. There are way too many influencers. There are Facebook groups. Some of them are completely feral and some of them are great. There's so much information out there. First of all of it is prone to everything we've talked about so far. You have people writing blogs, you have influencers, you have all these people who, again, they're brand new. They don't have enough experience to back up what they're saying. They're only telling you about programs that they have affiliate codes for. A lot of that we've already talked about applies to all of these things. But even with all that stuff that's out there, it's still all very hunt and peck, choose your own adventure type of a situation going on. It's all very nebulous. So you can read 12 different homeschool books in the same way we talked about things contradicting one another on Facebook, they can do that too. And so a lot of times you do that and you're left with, I still have no idea what I'm doing or how to approach this without completely screwing up my kids. So that can be challenging. Other things are things like homeschooling can sometimes be very isolating. If you're brand new and no one you know homeschools, who the heck are you going to for advice? And then top it off with the fact that when you went to go pull your kid out of school, if they were already in school, they probably made you feel like shit when you did it, because that happens a lot where they're like, oh, this is a bad idea and this is going to be screwed up and they're going to be antisocial and this and that, right? So you're already starting off feeling isolated and now doubting yourself. And it's really hard to figure out who to go to for advice and how to vet that person to ensure that the advice that you're getting is decent advice. Another really common trend that we see, which is a good thing, even though we don't want you feeling worried or sad, is that you're afraid that you're going to do it wrong. And I say that's a good thing because it means that you care, right? And we hear you. This is a lot. If you take on homeschooling, it is a lot. There's a lot of pressure. You can screw it up. There's entire Reddit boards filled with adults who are like, my parents fucked me up royally from homeschooling. So yes, you can screw this up. You'll see comments all the time like, there's no wrong way to homeschool. Oh yeah, there is. There's documentaries about it. Okay. There's books, there's Reddit threads, there's all kinds of stuff. And I don't say that to make you self-doubt. I just say it to say, when you are looking for advice, make sure you're going to the people who are doing it successfully, not to the adults of the people who are on the Reddit boards talking about what a disaster their education was. Because those people are still lingering in homeschool groups in a lot of cases too. Some of them are now homeschooling their grandchildren. We see them all the time. Okay. So that's challenging. Another thing that I think makes parents so vulnerable sometimes to bad advice in the world of homeschooling, and this could apply to anyone, but I think especially could apply to neurodivergent adults, especially those who were undiagnosed their whole education or a huge chunk of their education and had no idea why they felt like they were failing, why they felt like they didn't fit in, why they felt like they were on a different planet than everyone else in the same room that they were in. They're not necessarily thinking about education clearly because of the experience that they had and the trauma that they might be carrying from those experiences. And so it makes it really hard to figure out which end is up and who to trust and who not to trust. That can be really, really challenging. So a lot of times getting good advice, there's a lot of nuance to needing good advice. Like Amanda was saying before, like we need to be asking those questions before we're giving advice. So if somebody's just spitting advice at you without asking you any questions beforehand to learn more about your situation, about your kids, about your homeschooling approach, about your goals, about how your kids learn best, about your philosophy, all the nuance is gone if they just start spitting information at you. Nuance is going to come from genuine connection and dialogue. And nuance is what takes advice from one size fits all to really specific and actionable and successful. And so a lot of that becomes really, really challenging through a post and comment response type of situation where you're not really being able to have these conversations. I had a perfect example today. I went this morning to get an ashy glaze put on my hair because I decided to let my gray grow out, and it did. And my hair's been natural for a number of years, and I'm all about aging gracefully, so I'm fine with that. If you choose not to do that, I'm good with that too. No judgment. That was just what worked for me. But my gray grow out was brassy. There's all these women on Pinterest who have these amazing gray grow outs. I was not one of them. I had brassy orange and yellow tones in my hair. So anyway, I went, like 2 weeks ago, I talked to the guy. He says I can fix it. It needs to be low maintenance. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on my hair and sitting here for hours every month. Let's see if we can tone this down without making this a ninth full-time job for me. So the guy who does my hair speaks French as his primary language and has a solid grasp on Portuguese, but not fluent. The people who work in the salon have a solid grasp of Portuguese. They're native Portuguese speakers. Some of them have some French, and some of them, to varying degrees, have different levels of English. Okay. So he's trying to explain to me today that what he's going to do to my hair is kind of like an experiment. Like he's thinking this is going to work, but he's not really sure. And if somebody who spoke English was able to communicate that to me and be like, here's what I'm thinking. I think it's going to work because of this, that, and the other thing. But one of my concerns is X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. We would have had this really nuanced, specific conversation. What I got was a Google Translate message that was like, this idea is kind of crazy, so I hope you like it in the end. And I was like, what do you do? First of all, I live in Portugal and I don't have a grasp on Portuguese. So that's on me, 100%. I don't expect people to cater to me in that way. And second of all, I'm pretty low key about my hair. I'm like, it's hair. You can either dye over it, you can cut it, you can wait for it to grow out. Like it's bigger fish to fry in this world than the color of my hair at the end of the day. But my point is, like, all of that nuance was gone because we don't speak the same languages across the board. And so in a post and comment response type situation, a ton of that nuance is gone. And you got, I hope you like it because my idea is crazy. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Give it a whirl. Thankfully, I like it. So we're good.
Well, yeah. And I think that kind of flows nicely into the next point for me. And that is, you talked about blogs, but it's also true with books. There is jargon and terminology that isn't super clear, especially if you're new to homeschooling. And so you might find that you're reading a bunch of blog posts about best curriculum for this or best science curriculum or whatever. And they might list what's considered a neutral science curriculum, and it'll be recommended all the time as secular. But it leaves out evolution and the Big Bang Theory, but they're not going to necessarily tell you that. Or there's ELA and social studies that are touted as secular because you can skip the Bible study units. And you get these bloggers who aren't upfront about those things. Okay, so all of these things, we've done some red flags, some green flags, but what does responsible support look like? It's sources that are upfront about where they stand. Is this faith-based? Is it secular? Is it decolonized? Is it more traditional Eurocentric history? These things matter, and you can find what aligns with you. There are so many options across the entire spectrum, but you want your sources to be upfront about what they're providing so that you find what actually aligns with what you're looking for. And again, don't shy away from the person who asks clarifying questions before giving suggestions and support. Successful homeschooling requires looking at the whole big, complex picture. And you have to take the time to do that if you're going to give good advice. And again, it goes back to that nuanced and clarification and all of that kind of stuff. It also means that it is almost never one size fits all. Hopefully you're picking that up from this episode. And also, the good advice is not pretending like there's a single right way to do things. There are wrong ways to do things, but there are lots and lots of right ways to do things as well. There are lots of ways to get to the end goal. And anyone who refuses to acknowledge that is not giving you the best advice for you and your family. They're giving you the best advice for them. Maybe not even necessarily them and their kid, but for them, they're not giving you the best advice for you and your family.
I think we're proof of that there's no one right way to do it. I mean, that's our partnership, is that we both homeschool completely differently.
So different.
Our
Just
kids...
listen to last week's episode.
Yeah.
I make my kid do music for a year. Oh, that's so nice. Maybe he'll love clarinet because it's good for developing critical thinking.
But that's our jam. I'm raising happy kids who are ready to go off into the world. Amanda's raising a happy kid who's going to be ready to go off into the world as he gets a little bit older. And we've both done it completely differently. And I can be super excited when her kiddo has this awesome opportunity or does a really cool thing in his educational journey, even though it's nothing I would ever do with my own children potentially. And that's okay because there's multiple ways to get there. So it's okay. So
Yeah, no,
other
absolutely. I can
things.
be amazed with all of the amazing things your kiddos are doing. I can't imagine raising a kid who's doing half of those things or would have any interest at all in doing them. I have been dragged kicking and screaming into the world of Pokemon currently. I am not excited about potentially sitting through any sort of tournament or even footing the bill for the registration for the tournament. But I can think it's amazing that your kids ranked in the top 4% of European national or champion players, whatever. I don't even know all the terminology because there are lots of ways to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all good stuff. So here's the deal as we wind down. We are not the be all and end all of homeschool advice. We're not saying we're the only people on the internet you should be listening to. We
No.
gave you tons of green flags of ways to spot other sources of good advice. The reason that we built this Homeschool Moms Unfiltered universe, which really has turned into a universe which we had no clue was going to happen when we started. We
Listen,
were
I was
like,
like,
oh, we'll put out a
it's supposed to be
podcast and like it'll
yeah,
be
3 months of
right.
podcast. That was what I gave it. 3-month runway. Here we are.
And it is a universe. There's an online
Yeah.
community. We do coaching. We have online courses. We have books published. We did not plan any of this, none of this. But the reason that we created all of this and this support structure was because it's what we didn't have when we started. And we both ended up taking completely different journeys. We've never lived in the same part of the country or the world as one another. So we've both had access to very different experiences and bits of information. But both of us shared the experience that neither of us had adequate support, reliable support, all of the above when we first started. And there was a lot of trial and error and a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to screw this up and my kid's going to hate me. Are we rich from the Homeschool Moms Unfiltered universe? No. Absolutely not. I mentioned it in the last episode where I was like, I was talking about privilege and my husband and whatever. And I was like, oh, believe it or not, Homeschool Moms Unfiltered is not paying the rent in our apartment here. In fact, we had a meeting with a guy the other day who's helping us with some business stuff that's technical, that's so not in our wheelhouse. And as proof of what we were talking about in this episode, before he was just like, here's what I can offer you, he asked us a whole bunch of questions to better
Yeah.
understand our business model. So there you go. He's a good
Yep.
resource. And we give him all this information. And he was like, so how do you make money? And we were like, yeah, well,
We don't really. We
yeah,
cover the expense of editing equipment and,
yeah.
and like the website hosting. And it would
I
be
know.
nice to like actually make a little bit of money besides just cover. But like,
I think his subtle context in the question was, how are you going to pay me? And I was like, don't worry, we got you
it
covered,
was
my
it was
friend.
like I don't really know how to quote this because you make no money and I feel bad asking for it to help you. You really need my help, but also you
Yeah,
make no money. That's
true
true.
story.
Yep.
So, but check the show notes. There's tons of resources there. Whatever you need is there. We can help. What we've built has been done intentionally, has been done grounded in a combination of decades of homeschool and education experience between us, like decades and decades. I feel old saying that. And hundreds upon hundreds of studies that we have read, both in the efforts of educating our own kids and then, of course, for the podcast as research. We have built a world that is designed to reduce your anxiety, not increase it. We're not going to tell you you're screwing things up, that you suck, that your kids are going to fail. We will find a way to help you develop a successful path forward. And anything that you're worried about, we can talk it through from a place of experience and research. But I think the most important thing is everything that we do is personalized to your needs, how your kid learns, what your goals are. So we're never just going to comment and go, reading eggs. We do not do drive-by advice. That's not what we do, as evidenced by the fact that this episode is like 9 hours long.
Yeah, but I mean, that's it, right? That's why our attempt to build community and to help people and share advice is the two of us because it's like, well, Megan is all the way over here on so many things, and I'm all the way over here on so many things. And if we can make it work and we can have
Yeah.
respect for each other and appreciate and lift each other up, like we can help you find where you fit anywhere in that spectrum. And that's the goal, finding where you fit. You're not going to look exactly like me in my home, and you're not going to look exactly like Megan in her home. And we want to help you find your space and your place and feel like you're being supported and lifted up.
Yeah, for sure. So, our mantra to wrap up our episode is your kids deserve more than hot takes from keyboard warriors and strangers with ring lights. And you deserve support that actually supports you.
Yeah, true story.
Yeah.
Support that makes you feel good because
Yeah.
we all know the support that doesn't lift you up. Let's lift each
Hmm.
other up, especially
It's
these days.
everywhere.
Good God, especially these days.
I know. I literally, if I've been off my phone for too many hours, I'm like, I open my phone and I'm like, are we at war? Have we invaded Greenland?
Who
So,
did we
yeah.
invade now? Who
Right.
have
Which
we
country?
invaded now?
Yeah. It's like there's one of those wheels that you spin and
Yeah. Like you
please
get a
tell me.
free mug, you get a free pin, except it's like, oh, which country did we invade today?
Oh my
What
God, it's
fresh
just
hell did we
awful.
kick off around the world?
That's it. It's not funny, but I'd have lost my mind by
Yeah.
now if I wasn't laughing. So
Oh,
there you
yeah.
go.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right, friends, try to keep your sanity and happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a good one.